Hey guys, I'm just here today and I just want to tell you a little bit about my weekend. It's Sunday night and I want to just do a quick study on Daniel chapter 2. I want to show you how a lot of futurists interpret it, and then I just want to show you why I believe preterism makes a lot more sense. And so this weekend was really good. I went out yesterday night, and I got to sit down and just through Matthew 24 with somebody, sort of a verse by verse study where we jump around and try to get an understanding and some of the historical context of all of the discourse. And said he had his mind blown, that it was really enlightening. And I just want to say I'd be happy to do it with anybody who's hungry or curious to understand Matthew 24 and all the discourse. I believe that we can seek and we can find this truth that God has made available, especially in our days, with all the knowledge and all the evidence that we can gather together today. That was a really good evening. We stayed for probably 3 hours straight just studying that. And then I got to go to Experience Church's 5th birthday. Awesome. Just want to encourage that group of people if you're watching. That was super fun to see that in your new location at Glenmore Christian Academy in the Southwest Calgary there. I got to go in their theater, which was awesome. They had a bunch of blow up like soccer balls and stuff that were bouncing around, and people were having fun, jumping around, worshiping God, and that was just really good. And then I got to visit quickly. I got to drop in with, again, my friend at his church as well, and just encourage him as well for lunch. And then I came back. So, yeah, I got this new headset, which is nice. Since this weekend was so good, and since I saw the impact of what I was actually showing, it just encouraged me to actually just share more about just the understanding I've gained in the last year and a half or so after coming out of that cult I was in. So, yeah, let's jump into Daniel chapter 2. This is a study I made a couple weeks ago, and I just thought it'd be fun to just go through it with you guys. Let's just start in Daniel chapter 2, verse 1. Let's just go through Daniel chapter 2 quickly, just a few key verses. Then I'll show you guys some of the futurist views, and then I'll show you the main points that I want to show you at the very end. And that'll be it. So, Daniel chapter 2, verse 1. So, first of all, by writing the style of Daniel, he experienced these events during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar from 605 to 562 BC. In that time period, likely after 586 BC, actually, if you see in Adam Clark's commentary, it says second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, the second year of his reigning alone, for he was king 2 years before his father's death. This was therefore the 5th year of his reign, and therefore 4th of the captivity of Daniel. Just give some of the context of the book of Daniel. So this was, when Israel had been taken captive in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar means, "O God, Nebu, preserve/defend my firstborn son." So that might be interesting to know for somebody who knows the Bible a bit more. So let's get right into it. Daniel chapter 2, verse 1. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled. His sleep left him, right? So King Nebuchadnezzar has this bad dream. It really troubles him, stresses him out, and what does he do? Verse 2, then the king commanded that the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, Chaldeans, or Babylonians, also called Chaldeans, be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. The king said to them, I had a dream, my spirit is troubled. To know the dream, the Chaldeans said to the king, King, live forever, tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. And then What does the king do? He says, no, I'm not going to show you the interpretation. You have to tell me what the dream was, and you have to interpret it for me. And if you don't, I'm going to kill you all. So this was pretty harsh, and the king was obviously stressed out. And so what ends up happening is, let's see, verse 27, where Daniel actually asks for some time to pray, and then that night God gives him the vision and the interpretation of this dream, and he tells the king the dream. So let's see verse 27. His dream was a prophecy showing that things would happen in the future. So we can go here, verse 27. Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, or magicians, astrologers can show the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days, right? So when you think of latter days, you should be thinking the last days that he's referring to, which was when Jesus came. They were saying, we are in the last days, the end is at hand, it is coming speedily, and it is very, very near. In Hebrews, it says that your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this, and he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. So let's see what the dream was. Verse 31. You saw, O king, behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you. Its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So as you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand. No. So it's a very different stone. And it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them to pieces. I just want to compare this with the Young's literal translation. It says, has smitten the image on its feet and hath broken them small. Right? So when you see pieces, it actually means he's beaten them small. So basically these kingdoms would be shrunk down and they would become small in the presence of this kingdom. That was a very different kingdom, not made by any human sort of hands. So right, we have this statue that the king had dreamt of, and the interpretation of the dream we find in verse 38. You are, first of all, he says, into whose hand he is given wherever they dwell, children of man, the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, making you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold. So he was talking to King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel is saying this to King Nebuchadnezzar. You're that head of gold. Another kingdom, inferior to you, shall arise after you, yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. There shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. As you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. So the feet are divided. That was divided iron, which iron refers to Rome. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay. And then let's see verse 44. Basically, well, let's just keep reading. And those toes of feet were partly of iron, partly clay. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. So this kingdom was weakened. It was split up into 10, and it was partly weak. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. So intermarriage was a big issue for the Jews because of their covenant they had. and the promise which came through the genealogy, right? That they would be Abraham's offspring. So I'm going to show you, first of all, verse 44. It says, "In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end. It shall stand forever. Just as you saw the stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, its interpretation is sure." Okay, so that was basically the end of this interpretation. So what does this clay represent, right? So our issue right now is trying to understand what is the feet that is partly clay and partly of iron. Because this is where we get a lot of confusion on the end times eschatology, right here in verse 41. So to understand what clay is, I want to suggest going to Jeremiah. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 18, verse 6. "O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter has done? Declares the Lord. Behold, like the clay in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel." Right? So I just wanted to show that verse to say that Israel was kind of symbolized as clay in God's hands. That he was potter, he was the potter, and they were the clay, and he was shaping them and purifying them in his own ways and in his own time, right? So clay represents the old covenant Jews, old covenant house of Israel, the temple system. Now, what about iron? Let's just find another place where iron is actually mentioned. Psalms chapter 2, verse 9. Let's go verse 8 and 9. "Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." So this is very interesting because the iron would actually dash into pieces. Let's actually just compare this. As a vessel of potter does crush them. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces. So it still says pieces in the English Standard Version. As a vessel of potter dost thou crush them, is the Young's literal translation. So that's not a big difference actually, but so it says that they would be broken like a potter's vessel. So we have this picture of iron, which represented Rome, breaking the potter's vessel, which was the old covenant Jews. So this is actually a big deal if you think about it, because that means that Rome would have been God's instrument to destroy the Jews, which we know happened in 70 AD. So let's go back to Daniel chapter 2. I want to make one more point. So let's go there now. Verse 44. It says, "In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed." Right? So this is talking about the kingdom of God that Jesus came to set up. And when would it happen? It would happen in the days of those kings. Which kings? The kings he was just talking about. If you actually see the Young's literal translation, he says, "In the days of these kings." He's not talking about those some future kings. He's talking about these kings he was just talking about. In the days of these kings, God would raise up a kingdom right? He would cut out without human hands, right? So that means it wouldn't be this physical kingdom that Jesus says cannot be observed. Nobody's going to say, here it is or there it is. Let's just go there quickly. Actually, yeah, Luke chapter 17. Verse 22. The days are coming when you'll desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. And they will say to you, look there, or look here. Do not go out or follow them. For as lightning, no, yeah. So actually it was verse 21. It says, the kingdom of God is not coming in the day in ways that can be observed. So that's the main point, verse 20 to 21. Nor will they say, look, here it is, or there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you, right? Just show you that. It says, the reign of God is within you. So the kingdom would refers to that authoritative reign of God. In the literal translation, it just says the reign of God is within you. So it's not something that can be observed. It's a realization. It's a self-control sort of thing over your flesh that happens within you, whereas you display the nature of God through faith. And that, my friends, is the kingdom, how the kingdom is the nature of the kingdom. First of all, because it's not of this world, it's something that happens within you. And then I believe gets carried into the afterlife as well. So that's basically Daniel chapter 2. Let me just show you the futures view quickly. Let's by going to this picture over here. So there's something wrong with this picture. I hope you can see what it is right away. But now that we've gone through the chapter, so first of all, this is a lot of futurist sort of thinking on this, is that there was all these kingdoms that came in this period of about 600 years or 700 years. And then all of a sudden, they cut the feet off, throw it 2,000 years after the Roman Empire. And then they're referring it to it in our future as some future kings, because they can do that, say those kings, meaning some obscure those kings. And then they interpret what was physical as pointing to some sort of spiritual reality, whereas this simply did not have some strange spiritual reality. It was just talking about these actual kingdoms that would come along. And I believe it's dangerous to reinterpret that otherwise. So because Jesus only sets up his kingdom once, and he says that the time in which these things would happen there's be nothing like it before, and there'd be nothing like it after, as you can see in Matthew 24, verse 21. So it would be a very unique time where God would set up his kingdom, and there would be the tribulation, and all these things would happen at that time. It says the kingdom of God would come in the time of these kings. So it's something wrong if we try to cut that off and throw it in our future. And because I want to ask you one question. Why would Jesus try to reign in a physical kingdom if he didn't do it 2,000 years ago? Why wouldn't he just do it 2,000 years ago? But instead we find Jesus in John chapter 6. When they try to make him king, he runs away and he tries to hide from the people. Because why? His kingdom is not of this world, and it's a different kind of kingdom than we understand it, as physical, bodily and fleshly. And that is the preterist, that is the natural view, I believe, that we should take as having this one fulfillment. And we shouldn't say that this has some sort of strange double fulfillment, when there's only one hope and one salvation. And I just want to thank you for watching, and that's it.